All right, this is Illinois Guide by Your Side, Parent Guide Training, Module 2. And I am Carrie Ballion, the Program Coordinator for Illinois Guide by Your Side. Tonight we are going to cover the crystal ball, supporting families with decision-making strategies, Illinois basics, resources, and information. So the crystal ball, these are those questions where we as parents would love to know what's in store for us in the future, and a lot of times when working with families, questions like these will come up. And we touched a little bit on this the night before. For instance, will my child be able to go to the school dance? Will they be able to be successful and hold a job? All those things that we as parents worry about our children's future and their ability to be a upstanding citizen and an involved person. So when these questions come about, you want to make sure that you keep the keys to the vehicle. You don't want to lose the control of the car. So you're going to listen to them, and again, starting the listening or starting the dialogue with, letting them know that their information is going to stay with you. It's not going to come home and be discussed at the dinner table with your husband or with your neighbor and your best friend. That whatever they want to say, they can share with you and know that it's going to be at a safe place. And the other thing, too, sometimes when these questions come about, there might be an underlying question. They're really concerned about the future, because right now they can't see their child really making much progress, or they can't see their child being a successful user of their amplification that they have chosen. So they're really concerned, and really what they're thinking about in the future lies with what's happening right now. And we want to make sure that we motivate families, motivate them to move ahead, motivate them to make choices that are purely their choices, not anything that's influenced by what we say or do. And we want to make sure that we provide them hope that, today is today and tomorrow is different. It's a fresh start. Things change all the time, and that as we progress down this journey, it's not all about the hearing loss. Eventually, the hearing loss is not the first and foremost thing that we're thinking about every day when we think of our child. So to sum up the crystal ball, not all deaf children learn to talk well, but many can be fluent in talking and listening, or can also be fluent in visual language. If the people surrounding the child fully engage in the choices you make. That could include using equipment to aid hearing, or helping them find meaning in daily language skills in helpful ways at home and in the community. Deafness or hearing loss doesn't affect just spoken communication, but affects how the child learns to understand jokes, to understand at a deeper level the complex things that people say or write, and how to use communication to learn about the world and the people in it. And this had, like I said, come right out of the guide's guide under the crystal ball section. And I just felt like it really spoke to the whole idea of there are things that are different, and our child might not look like any other child. However, we could say the same thing about our hearing children, and that children are different from one another, and that is okay. But if we make sure that we give them all the tools necessary that they can be successful, then, they can go ahead and communicate with the world and understand the world too. Now, we may have families that want to see things as black and white, and that there's only one right way. For instance, if you're working with a family that maybe the parents have an engineering background or a healthcare background, they are especially ones that we have come to see over our time working with them as being that there's only one right way. There's no gray area, and, they're the chances of making a decision and then changing that decision really aren't something that they would consider. And I know I may be stereotyping, however, a large portion of the families that we have worked with those backgrounds see things strictly as there's just one way to do it. And the other thing, too, that with looking at children, and again, the sticky wicket of can I meet your child that we discussed the other night, is that even two children with the exact same audiogram and journey can have two different journeys but both be successful. And that's all right, too. And many things, like we said again last night, factor into the journey and the success of the child, how invested the family is, how long they've been using amplification communication, how well the family has embraced those choices and continues to work with the children, how much therapy or services they're receiving. All those things factor into the child's journey and their overlying success. And again, what I call success and what someone else might call success in their child could be two entirely different things too. So the tools that you need is, to listen, and don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes when we sit back and we just think about and process what they're saying, that silence, even though it may be uncomfortable for us, it's sometimes also uncomfortable for them. But what ends up happening is they end up filling in the silence, and they end up continuing their story. They might continue to share thoughts that they have, but they're afraid to. So letting that chance happen, I guess, and seeing where it takes you. And it's okay to say there is a lot to think about with all of this, isn't there? It's okay to acknowledge that it is a lot happening. And, maybe saying, how do you feel about that? What can I do to help you? Especially when you start to talk about communication options or schooling options, it just seems sometimes overwhelming, or it seems like so much to take on. And sometimes when you sit back and you say, what can I do to help you? What step would you like to take next? See what they say. And if they're still unsure of what that next step might be, suggest to, start smaller. Okay? Thinking back to learning how to drive a car, the very first time when we got in the car, we didn't just get in and go. We got in, we got comfortable with the equipment, we adjusted our seats, adjusted our mirrors. It's the same thing. It's all part of the driving experience. It's the same thing for our children's journey, that we have to take things in small steps in order to prepare us for the lifelong journey of raising our child. And again, that CDC decision guide that we had talked about, which we'll be sharing in a moment here, utilizing that tool. So we're going to do a little role playing, and I am going to pause the recording. All right, so let's move on to supporting families with decision-making strategies. So remember, just like the picture here on the slide with the oodles of choices of different types of cookies at a bakery, not everyone likes the same thing. Not everything's a fit for the same family. And what works for mine may not work for somebody else's. And that's why there are so many choices. And in the end, it's okay to change your mind. If you start something and it just doesn't feel right, or you're not seeing any change or progress, then it's okay to reevaluate that and go from there. Seek other opinions and change it up if you need to. So the process of making a decision, you want to define the question, identify the options, consider the positive and negative, make a decision, then you can evaluate your choice and either modify it or stick with it. And this is all within the decision guide tool. So here's what it looks like. You can actually find it on the CDC website. I have the link here in the PowerPoint. So there's information in the CDC website, and CDC stands for Center for Disease Control. And so there's hearing loss information there, as well as this decision-making guide. And they also have materials in Spanish. So it's kind of like a 4-page booklet. Again, there's a black and white copy of it in your training binder. And then this is based on communication choices. However, you can take out the word communication and snap in a new word, and then go through the different steps, and then just change up the questions a little bit, but use it to really evaluate and make a decision for anything that you might be facing with your child. All right, so a little role playing. Let's see. Lucy, I think you're up first, and we're going to pause it. Now we're going to kind of get into some Illinois Guide by Your Side basics. I know you guys have done some of the webinars, some of the pre-training already. We're going to, touch on some basics of forms. We're going to touch on some basics, just point out some things that I really want to make sure that stick with you about the program. So we're kind of calling this our boot camp. When working in person with families, make sure you take the intake form with you if you're comfortable with that, or if you're not taking it with you, look over it before you go so you know who you're talking to, how old the child is, what you talked about last, what issues they might be struggling with, and so forth. So you're prepared. The Children in Hearing Loss Binder, which comes from Choices for Parents, is that checked off on the back? Now, when I do an intake form, on the back of the intake form, there's a referred to column. And in that referred to column is a bunch of different categories, and one of them is Choices for Parents. And if I just check the box that, there, a lot of times that means that I'm not referring them to it, but they already have the binder. If I check it and then after Choices for Parents write send binder, that means that I've contacted Karen, gave her their information, and she's going to send a binder to them. However, if you're the one doing the intake form with them along at the time, then making sure that you have a copy of that Children in Hearing Loss binder with you, and you could show it to them and say, I was wondering if you'd received this yet. Would you be interested in having this? This is a great informational tool about all the different things that we would need to know about raising our child that has a hearing loss, and even statewide resources for us in Illinois. It's a free resource for families. Would you like one? And not that you would give it to them there, but you could say, if you're interested, I'll give Karen your name and address, and she will mail one out to you, and so forth. Then also, the release form. Again, if you're meeting with them the first time, take a release form with you. We'll talk about the release form a little bit further down the line, and I'll point out some pointers on that. And make sure if they complete it, have them complete it and take it back with you. Don't have them complete it after you leave, and trust in them to mail it out. What other needs do they have? Was there something else that on the intake form or from your initial conversation with them that they were really interested in? Maybe it's about IEPs. So maybe you bring some IEP information with you. If their child is going to be turning 3, in your packets of goodies from me is that when I'm 3, where will I be? Yellow booklet. That's perfect. Hopefully you have one in English and Spanish. I think I messed up, and you might not have one or the other. If you don't, just contact me, email me, and let me know, and I'll make sure you get the one that you're missing. But bring that to show them, or whatever it is that they might have needed, maybe have some of those tools on hand. So one of the things when they fill out the release form, if they okay on the release form by signing it, stating that we can collect their data to share back with our program partners, then they will get a free 1-year membership to Hands and Voices, and they will also get a free book of choice. Currently, this is the plan. After funding runs out from Andrea, she may not be able to continue to offer the book of choice. If this happens, I will let you guys know, but currently this is the plan. Now, so they've completed the form and they might be like wondering when they're going to get their book. I turn over the list of names and addresses to Andrea once a quarter. Okay, so just letting them know that they might not see anything for a couple months, but it will come, and if they have questions about it, that they can always ask you again. Okay, so family basics. Do you work with them by phone? Do you work with them by email? My preference is phone and in person. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you go out to their house every day or every time you talk, but, you know, in our life of drive-throughs and fast-paced stuff, we have a tendency to do a lot of emailing, but not every family works like we do. So, with that being said, don't assume because you sent the email that they've actually received it and looked at it, or they could be at the point where they receive so many emails that they've taken a time out and are ignoring their emails, so again, they haven't received the information. So don't count on that as your primary mode of communication with families. That should be your last resort, honestly. In today's age, again, with all the emails that go out and messages and stuff, we hardly get personable phone calls anymore. So really, you know, setting up that time to talk with them or check in, and whether even if that's just once a month. If you've got some families that are pretty good and on hold, you know what, set up. Say, you know what, on the second Tuesday of every month, I'm going to give you a call. Whatever time of the month that you think you're going to have the free time, or whatever night of the week that you think works for you and works for this family, set it up ahead of time. And, you know, I would always even, too, do email as a backup. A couple days before you're going to give them a call, email them and say, you know what, just reminding you, I'm going to give you a call Tuesday night. See ya. And, you know, utilizing that tool to help support them actually answering the phone and talking with you. Oh, and before I move on to the next slide, and the reason why I bring this up is through talking with some families that have worked with parent guides, they had shared with me that they were very frustrated that they didn't receive phone calls and that communication was primarily done through email. They felt that it wasn't personable. They felt that they weren't getting the time that they wanted. They felt like they couldn't really ask the questions that they wanted to ask. So, and people are, you know, leery about typing personal information and thoughts down on email. So, you know, they maybe are greater chances of them asking a question or sharing a thought over the phone than they are through email. So, again, your Guide by Your Side email accounts. Stick to this when working with families and professionals and check it regularly. I know I email you guys at your personal email addresses, and I will continue to do so because sometimes that's easier because you can access it from your phones and tablets and all that other goodies. But when working with families, stick to your Guide by Your Side email account. Trust me, it will make life easier. It protects the family's privacy, too, because it's not an account your family can access. Okay? Paperwork, especially timesheets, make sure they're timely. No later than 45 days from the date of service. I would really appreciate if you just get in the habit of at least once a month submitting time. Make sure your timesheets are complete. Don't leave anything blank or forget to fill in a part. And then make sure the items are in date order. Make sure that you don't double bill. Something that you billed for on your last timesheet, you put it again on the next timesheet. And as far as date order goes, I always start with your oldest date on top down to your newest date. Don't do a timesheet per family. Don't do all of one family's dates and then list another family's dates. It needs to be in date order of anything you do, whether it's training or working with families, from oldest date to most recent date. And please, please, please double check your addition. I can't tell how many times parent guides have gypped themselves out of hours because of just adding it up wrong. Outreach. Set up your goals now. I know I've given you your popcorn buckets. If you have any questions about who to use that with or how to use those, please let me know. Those are primarily just for you to make up and go into a place in your neighborhood or in the region that you're serving, and that is a provider that you know that works with children who has a hearing loss, and dropping it off and saying, you know, please pass this on to your team. I'll be following up with you in a week or so to see if you have any questions or if there's anything else I can share about the program. You know, and that's if no one's available at that time. If you walk in and you say, is there somebody I can speak to that works with children who have a hearing loss, and, you know, they do have a few minutes, great. Grab those few minutes, deliver it, and basically give them the same speech, but at least you're not leaving it with the secretary. If you have to leave it with the secretary, that's okay too. But if you could try to take it up a notch, even better. The outreach challenge. So in November's training, I gave everyone an outreach challenge to complete 3 outreaches by the year end. For you guys, I don't think we're going to do any specific time frame, but I do want you to think of 3 places that you will either go to or send a letter to or make a phone call to either talk, explain a little bit more about the program, or to see if you can go in and do a presentation to their team. And whatever you're thinking, please email me those places so I can see if it's something that's been done recently, okay? So whether that's a CFC office, a DSCC, maybe a support group somewhere, or a school, whatever you may be thinking, an audiologist, please share those with me, and we'll talk through those and figure out who would be an appropriate outreach. When you do any type of outreach, a letter, in-person visit, buckets, booths, any of that, you always complete an outreach form and submit them with your timesheet. The only things as far as outreach goes that you would be paid for is whether it was an in-person presentation or it was a booth or expo that you worked and represented our groups. So, family visits. Why should we visit a family in person? It allows you to place a face with a name. It allows you to give you the ability to read the parent kind of over the phone. Sometimes you think they're okay, they sound okay, but when you get there, they don't really look that. Their body language is telling you something different, and you can see that. You can kind of get a glimpse of their home life. Not that we're, doing the dust test by any means, but, is grandma living there? Do they have a nanny? What does the family dynamic look like? How many other children are, and what are the needs of the other children? We don't dive that deep when we're really talking to families unless, mom comes right out and I said, it says to you, I got to be honest with you, we're living with our in-laws and it's killing me. But rarely does that actually happen, and it is the case, though. Not that we're going to click on their TV and say, oh my gosh, do you use closed captioning? This is such a great tool, and I don't know if you guys do. We have, and it is awesome. I truly think it has made such an impact with his reading ability and his understanding of what's happening. But, it could be the simplest little thing. You're sitting in the room, they've got the TV on, and, maybe you're looking for a conversation starter, and you notice on the TV there's no closed captioning. And you could simply say to them, I don't know if you've heard this from anyone yet, but we turned on our closed captioning at the recommendation of another friend of mine who had a child with hearing loss, and, we really saw a difference in how much earlier our child learned to read and them being able to understand what was happening and putting words with what the actions were on the TV. And so I just wanted to point out to you, have you thought anything or have you heard anything about that? So again, you're not going up to the TV, turning it on, and quizzing them, but it might be a conversation starter. Understanding their means. You know, people are proud and they don't know that asking for help is okay. You don't have to be straightforward about it. You just give them the information and the tools and let them take it from there. You know, maybe you walk into the home and there's no furniture there, you know, and, you know, you just get this feeling that they might be needing some additional help in other areas, you know, and so, again, leading into a conversation of, is there anything else I can help you with? Even if it's not related to the hearing loss, is there anything else that your family may need or might need help in finding a resource or more information about, and going from there. You get a feel for the people that need that person-to-person contact. And the other thing, too, is many cultures want to thank you for what you're doing for them. And that might be come into the territory of eating and then serving you treats or giving you gifts and stuff like that. And there's information in our policy and procedure manual on how to handle that. But, you know, going through an email or talking over the phone, you don't get that sense of appreciation that you can when you're in person. And that makes us feel good about what we're doing and feels good about what the progress the family's making and that you're truly helping them. So this next slide here is a snapshot of the Parent Guide Review. Every June we have done these. Now, I think for you guys, we'll probably do one maybe in October. It'll give you a snapshot of how you're doing. I don't think we're going to do it right away in June. I'll think about that some more. It's not typical that we bring people in midway through the year. We usually all come in at the same time. So maybe before our in-person training in October, we'll do yours. But I do contact a family that you work with. I just randomly pick one, and I ask for feedback about your work with them. The questions that I ask revolve around the Parent Guide's timeliness, their bias, the support they've offered, and any other miscellaneous suggestions that the family may have. And then I will also, that middle section there is a chance for you to evaluate yourselves in 3 different areas: perception of your work, feedback for the program, and personal goals. And it's okay. It's not a scary thing. But I really think that so that we're all on the same page, that it would help everyone continue to grow and that there isn't miscommunication along the way. Progress reports. So the progress report looks like this. There's 3 sections of the progress report separated by an orange line. One progress note per family, so in the top box in the right corner, you would put in the family's name and then your name, and then each section of this progress report is each and every time you make contact with the family, whether that's just jotting them a quick email and taking a quick note about what email you sent or what information you sent in the email, recording the date, so that if you're wondering when you last talked to the family, you could quickly pick up your progress notes and see where you left off, what was the last thing you talked about. Recap would be the information or the communication that you had. What did you discuss? Resources sought, what were they looking for? And resources given, what did you give to them? Whether that was something from a question they asked at that meeting or maybe from the meeting before, what did you turn over to them or suggest to them at that point? All right, so if you end up within a quarter's time having more than one progress report sheet per family, that's okay. You would just continue on. Any time you make a contact with a family, in each section, it says progress note, and then there's a line, and then you would number that. So the very first time you make contact with the family, it's note number 1. Say, and the next time you talk with the family, you're emailing them. That would be note number 2. And you continue increasing that number each and every time you make contact or attempt to contact the family. When that quarter ends and you send me this, you do not start renumbering. You continue your numbering into the next quarter. Does that make sense? All right, so the next slide here is just the tip sheet. Again, these are in your training binders. Again, writing the last name of the child. A lot of times we'll find mom and child do not have the same last name. How long your contact is. So there's boxes for 15-minute checks, so 15, 30, 45-minute, or 60-minute. Say you go and you meet with the family and you're there for an hour and a half. You can either write in hour and a half or you can check the 60 and the 30 box. Doesn't make a difference to me. If you're talking to them on the phone and it was like a 10-minute conversation, then check the box for 15. If you've talked on the phone with them and it was a 35-minute conversation, then just check the box for 30. Just round up or round down when appropriate. I think that's most of, I went through most of this on the previous slide. The next slide will go on to more about when it's due. So our quarters are, first quarter being January, February, March, second quarter being April, May, June, third, July, August, September, fourth, October, November, December. So the first quarter progress notes are due April 1st. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, the end of the month, so everyone's going to be turning their progress notes in to me April 1st. For you guys, since you'll just be picking up families now, your progress notes won't be due until the end of the second quarter, start of the third, which is July 1st. The third quarter due October 1st, fourth quarter due January 1st. So they're always due the first of the month of the new quarter. There is a file where you can save them electronically and then email them to me, or if you fill them in by hand, you can scan them and email them to me, or you can mail them to me. And if you mail them to me, you might want to either mail me a copy or make yourself a copy to keep on hand if you want something to look back about the family, either way. So how to save the file. So what I would suggest is on your computer, especially if you're saving them to your computer using the electronic one, you would have a file folder for each family in a computer, have that file saved, that folder saved under the child's last name. Then you would open the folder and save the file there. Save the file with the child's first initial, last name, quarter, and year. So you're working with them April 15th. This is your progress notes for April or whatever for the second quarter. So, and you're working with Miley Cyrus. It would be M. Cyrus, second quarter, so that's 2, and the year is 2012, so it would be 12. So M. Cyrus 212 is how you would save it. Does that help? And then just keep it consistent. If you want to put in spaces, that's fine. So every time you meet with the family, you just move to the next section of the progress note and fill it in. If you're still, when you're still meeting with them in June, which is still part of that second quarter, you would just continue to save it under the same name because it's still that second quarter. And you don't need to start a new document each quarter. You can either carry on to additional pages or and just save it as the new quarter's name. Okay? Timesheets. So, again, in your book, they can be emailed to me by the 13th or the 26th of every month. Paydays are the 15th and 30th. So what you submit on the 13th won't be paid until the end of the month. So they're 2 weeks behind. And there's a timesheet tip sheet. Say that quickly. And here it is. So again, you can email them to me, or you can scan it and email it, or you can mail it the old-fashioned way. Just allow for time to for me to get it before the submission date. Otherwise, it won't get submitted until the next time. So making sure you fill in your name, the date range of your service times for your timesheet, And then right underneath is parent guide signature. Do not forget to sign it. If you're doing it electronically, please sign your name with a black Sharpie marker on white paper, scan that, and cut and paste that onto your timesheet. If you need help with that, let me know and I'll walk you through it, or we'll work on it. But I do need an actual signature. So service date would be the date that you, from your progress note of when you work with the family, the name of the family, writing the child's last name. If it's a webinar, then just put in the training title. Service done through, was it the phone, email, or in person? If it's a webinar, you can just leave that blank. Progress note number, again, writing down the progress note number that matches that service date. Family file open or closed. If you're going to continue to work with them, they'll be open. If this is the last time you're working with them, then please write closed. Family time. This is the time that you actually work with the family, whether it was just a 15-minute phone call, then you put 15 minutes. Mileage time, if you're meeting with them in person and it's your first time meeting with them in person, then you would receive mileage time for that visit, and that is a minute per mile. So, for instance, it's 15 minutes, or 15 miles, 15 miles one way, that's 30 miles round trip, so that would be 30 minutes total travel time. You just convert those miles into minutes. Any additional expenses, maybe you had a toll or parking fees or, I don't know, if you had meals. We typically don't compensate for meals, so that would be something that would have to be approved. But then that's where you could list it if that was the case. And then the total time. So you met with the family for an hour. It was 30 minutes of travel time, so the total time would be an hour 30. Outreach is the second section of boxes there at the bottom. This is when you're going to be mailing a letter, doing a presentation. Pretty much when you do anything that gets paid, it gets listed on your timesheet. If you're just mailing a letter or dropping off a popcorn bucket, then you would just fill out the outreach form and include that with your timesheet. So you did a booth at the Deaf Fest on March 30th. You would write March 30th, Deaf Fest booth. Any additional expenses? No, I didn't have any parking fees or whatnot. If you have mileage, you don't get compensated for mileage for outreach unless approved, and that's in extreme situations. But what I would recommend is that you'd still list your mileage so that you could keep it for tax time if you need it and you wanted to write it off. And then if any outreach that is 1 to 4 hours, you would get paid $40. For any outreach that is 4 to 7 hours, you would get paid $90. And so in the last column there, you would either write $40 or $90, whatever was appropriate. Okay? Timesheets, again, 45 days out to the latest. I cannot stress that enough. Make sure you're billing for family time, outreach, monthly trainings, mileage time, basically 45 days to bill for anything. And if you forget, please still submit. If, say, you realize 2 months later that you didn't bill for something, still submit it so I can record it so that we can, help plan the budget for future years. But you would most likely not be able to get paid for that situation. Training time. So the monthly webinars and meetings, if you attend the Guide by Your Side monthly webinar live in person, which is at your computer, you can bill for that time. You bill for 1 hour. If the meeting goes over, you still only bill for 1 hour. If it's shorter, you still bill for 1 hour, which is the 15. Outreach, what is paid for? Booths relating to hearing loss expos or conferences, presentations done for professionals in the field, even presentations done for parent groups too. Extracurricular events such as trainings, Any outreach must be pre-approved by me as far as outreach that you would get paid for. And all program partners must be represented by the parent guide when you do a booth or presentation. It's actually built into our PowerPoint presentation where you talk about choices for parents, hands and voices, and the Illinois EDDI program. Now, each parent guide, we budget for 3 $40 outreaches and 1 $90 outreach each year. Our year starts April 1st. So April 1st on through March 31st, you have the opportunity to do 3 $40 outreaches and 1 $90 outreach. However, if you've completed those and you find another opportunity to do another outreach, or you're interested in doing one, please ask me first, and we'll see if our budget will allow for that. If you're attending an event and there is another guide there or another guide interested, only one can bill for that unless you are sharing time. And so if it's an all-day booth and one of you does the first part of the day and the other person does the other half of the day, then you would each bill for just the half, which is the $40. Otherwise, if I have multiple people say that they would like to attend an event, the outreach, the person that would be able to do it would be the first person that would contact me saying that they would want to do it. So this is what the table setup looks like for a booth or an expo. We have a banner. It is not in Spanish, and we have a tablecloth that is not in Spanish. The only materials that we have in Spanish are our brochures, but if you are going to do a booth or expo, just let me know and I will be able to get the tools to you so that you would have everything you need to set up. This is the outreach form. Pretty self-explanatory. I think there's a tip sheet afterwards here. Yep. And so the date would be the date that you did the outreach, not the date you're filling out the form. Who was it for? Was it a conference or was it for a school? Where was it held? The phone and mailing address and email for the person that you contacted to set up the presentation. How long your presentation lasts. If you're there, a lot of times the presentations, if you're doing it to a staff somewhere, usually only take 20, 30 minutes, but I would put down an hour because it's still a worthy presentation to receive compensation for, and you've got your setup time before that and, your possibility of talking to people after your presentation as well. If it was a presentation like you attended a conference and you were a speaker at the conference and during that presentation you also talked about the program, then, topics discussed, you can put down presentation and the name of the topic. Otherwise, if you're just going somewhere and talking about Guide by Your Side only, then you could just put Guide by Your Side intro. If it was a booth, you would check yes. What information did you give out? Did you hand out posters, brochures, and bracelets and Post-its? Whatever you handed out, please list on that line. Follow-up needed. Did somebody ask about more information, more brochures, a specific contact? Who do you need to follow up with and about what? And then the last part is the people to add to the mailing list. If it's just a couple people at the meeting with you, you can just list them on the line there. Otherwise, you can take a mailing list form with you and have those that are interested write their name and information down on the mailing list form, and I can get them added to our list. They would receive any information about upcoming events. If our quarterly newsletter would also get sent out to them. If we're looking for submissions for our quarterly newsletter, I'll send out an email asking for that. So that's typically what they receive if anyone asks. So for you guys, you'll be doing an intake form with your Spanish-speaking families. Every family needs to have a completed intake form. It allows us to collect basic information about the family and their journey so far. And you can even fill out the family with them in person or over the phone. So when you're looking at the intake form, there's 2 pages. This is the front page. The key things that I want to point out, at the very top above the orange line, the referral agency, that's who referred this family to us. So if it was the University of Chicago, you can write University of Chicago there. If it was Choices for Parents, you can write Choices. You don't have to, if it's somebody that we commonly use, you don't have to fill out their phone and address. You can just leave it with the name of the organization and the person who passed the referral on to you. The date in the top right corner is the date you received the referral. The date you actually completed the intake form will be on the back on the second page. So when I'm going through this with the family, when you ask the child's name, the AKA name is also known as, so do they have any nicknames? A lot of times what happens is when the child is born, one name gets entered on the birth certificate, and that's who public health is kind of looking for, trying to follow up with the family. But then the family switch and maybe use their nickname or whatnot. So it kind of helps just in case that was the situation and public health thinks they're still looking for the family, but really, truly, the family's there. They're just utilizing a different name. That really helps them kind of breathe a sigh of relief knowing that that family's moved along and is receiving help. Date of birth, whether they're male or female, what hospital were they born at. So when your child was born in the hospital, and did they have their hearing screened? Did you remember if they passed or did not pass in the hospital? Sometimes you'll find that the parents will say, oh, they passed in one ear and did not pass in the other ear. I will check both boxes then, and when you do that, I will know what you mean. Does your child have any other medical issues aside from the hearing loss? And they say, oh, yes, they have Charge syndrome, or oh, it runs in our family, it's hereditary, or they have Downs, I'm trying to think of some other syndrome names. I can't think of any right now. So you can write that there. If there's anything else that they mention, like, oh, they have vision issues or motor development or asthma, I would just write that off to the side. I keep a spreadsheet of all our families, and I will enter that information into the spreadsheet, because if I have another family that comes in and says, you know what, my son has vision issues in addition to the hearing loss, do you have any other families that I can talk to? Then I can quickly look at the spreadsheet and find those other families and connect the family or let the parent guide know that there are other families in the program that would be appropriate for them to talk to. Audiologists, who are they currently going to see for audiology? Ear, nose, and throat doctor, have they seen an ear, nose, and throat doctor yet? And again, if they don't, if it's somebody that we commonly know, you don't need to put down the city or the phone number. You can leave it, as is. The date the child was first diagnosed with hearing loss. So a lot of times when you ask the family if they passed or did not pass in the hospital, when you go to ask the date when they were first diagnosed with the hearing loss, a lot of times people think, well, I told you they didn't pass at the hospital. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll phrase it, well, when did your child have that ABR test done? When were they officially diagnosed? And they'll be like, oh, I think that was back in October 2011. Okay, so then you can just write down October 2011. You don't need to be specific down to the very date and minute. The other thing, too, is they might say, I think they were about 4 months old. All right, they were born in February, 4 months old, March, April, May. So was that about May, June of, 2011? Yeah, that sounds right. So you can just pick one of those, let me know, and put that down on the line. So is the hearing loss in one ear or both ears? Or maybe they have auditory neuropathy. AN on the form stands for auditory neuropathy, which is like a fluctuating hearing loss. And so you can check that. In the right ear, do you know if the hearing loss is mild or moderate or profound? And then check the appropriate box. Same thing with the left ear.
If they only have hearing loss in one ear, you only have to fill it out for the ear that has the hearing loss. And then the other thing I'd like you to do, and I'm going to be revamping this form, I just did not have time to do it before speaking with you tonight, is off to the side by the ears, if you could say, so is your child using any amplification? Are they using any hearing aids or anything to help them hear? And then whatever that may be, recording that as well. Again, that's just additional data for the state. It's nothing major. Kind of also gives us an idea of where they're at so far in the journey. Mom's name, dad's name, address, county, very important. Make sure you figure out what county they're in. If they don't know what county they're in, that's okay. You can take their city and look it up, Google it up when you get home and find out what county it's in. Home and cell, when I find out those phone numbers, I always ask them, is there a number they prefer to be called at in the time of day or day of the week that's better, and I'll just jot that off to the side. I usually don't ask for work phone number unless they offer it up to me, and they say, I really think it's easier for me to talk at work, then you can jot that down. Email, again, if they have it, please gather that, because that's one way that we can stay in communication with them as far as letting them know about events. Ethnic background of the child, primary language at home. Sometimes with primary language at home, I'll have a family say, I use English and Grandma and Dad use Spanish. Okay, so I check both boxes. The other thing, too, you might find is that they might use ASL. And I don't have a box for ASL, but please check ASL, and if they use Spanish as well, check both of those again. Insurance. The reason why we ask what insurance they have, and private would be like if they have insurance through their work or something that they pay for on their own, like Blue Cross Blue Shield and so forth, that would be private. All kids, Medicaid, kind of the same field, so I would check the box, all kids, for either one of those. And the reason why we ask that, and I explained this to the families, I'm up front with them, I said, obviously there's no cost to participate in the program, and, we're not going to be billing insurance or anything like that for your time working with us. But we ask that because there are some organizations and professionals that work with families that have all kids in Medicaid in the state, and there's some that don't. And so the more information I know about you, the easier it is for me to lead you to appropriate resources and not frustrate you, because it might not turn out to be a service that can help you in the end. And a lot of times they're like, oh, okay, yeah. And there's no issue answering that question. All right, so the back of the form. So contacts made to date. A lot of times what I ask when I get to this part, so is the family doctor or their pediatrician, do they know about the hearing loss yet? Are they aware? And if they say yes, then I just check that box. I don't record the physician's name. Have they started an EI yet? Or, and so if yes, then you just, again, check the box, the CFC box. I don't write down the CFC number of what office they use unless they tell me. DSC stands for Designated Service Coordinator. Almost all the early intervention offices should be utilizing one key service coordinator, the designated service coordinator, to work with families with children who have a hearing loss. However, that is not always the case. If they know their service coordinator's name and they'd like to tell you, or if they mention it, you can write it down there. Otherwise, I actually use that line for other things. I ask them, do you remember when you were referred to EI, or who told you, when it was about that you learned about EI? I think my son was like 3 months old. Okay, so you figure out that date and you put, March of 2011. And then, so you found out about March 2011, probably started filling out all that paperwork and stuff. And about how old was Jack when he started to receive therapy and stuff through early intervention? I think he was about 4.5, 5 months old. Oh, okay. And so then, all right, April/May of 2011. And the reason we would do this, again, it's just for data purposes. In the EDDI program, we want to stick to the 1-3-6 model. So children with a hearing loss are diagnosed by 1 month of age. Okay, so they have their hearing screened within 1 month of age. 3 months of age, they have received diagnosis. They know for sure whether or not there's hearing loss. And 6 months of age, they're connected to services receiving amplification if the family hopes to, and enrolled in early intervention. And so we want to make sure that our state is sticking to that 1-3-6 model. So that's why we ask some of the questions that we do. And this really helps Ginger see where the holes are in the program and what might need to be tweaked. The other thing that I do, either on the lines that say other or on the CSC, DSC line, I will say, oh, so your child's enrolled in early intervention. What services are they receiving? Are they receiving speech, physical therapy, if a child has multiple needs? And then I'll just kind of jot those down in that area too, so I kind of have a reminder of where they're at and how many services they're receiving. Where else was I going to go with that? If they've aged out of early intervention, okay, so they're no longer 3 or under, then I would still ask them, did you participate in early intervention? Do you remember about what age that they were when they received early intervention, started early intervention? And then still jot that down, please. DSCC, Division of Specialized Care for Children, have they heard of that program? Have they started the process? Are they utilizing that program? If yes, then I check the box. If not, then I'll write sent brochure or gave brochure, whether it was in person or not. And they do have brochures in Spanish. And then to the far right is the concerns column. So if you're talking with them and they're like, I'm really concerned about communication options and, really wondering what school's going to be like. So you can check those boxes to kind of keep you remembering what their initial concerns were. The referred to box. So they've mentioned communication options and not knowing where to go for sign language. So you can check the referred to sign language box. And with the referred to, it can go 2 different ways. One, you'll get information back to the family, or in my case, when I do the intake, that I'm passing it along to a to a parent guide, then that parent guide would know who maybe I've made contact with already for the family. So for the choices line, I'll write after that, send binder. And I'll say, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to contact Karen at Choices for Parents. I'm going to give her your name and address, and she'll send out one of those informational binders to you right away. I've had situations where they were having a hard time with connecting with DSCC. And so then I would say, would you mind me giving your office a call and asking them to give you a call? Just taking one less thing off your plate. And so if that's okay, then I checked that box there and I said, have them call her, or I'll write a little note behind it about what I need to do. But always ask for the family's permission before you go and give out their name and number. So at the very bottom there, permission granted to give name and address to. When we do our any of the referrals, you can write that there. Or if they're just signing the release form, you can write Guide by Your Side program partners there. The release information obtained, did you have them fill out the form with you? Did you get that, yes or no, and the date? One of the last questions I asked them is that we have a mailing list where we send out information about events, resources, and things that are happening throughout the state. We send out a quarterly newsletter. Would they like to be part of that mailing list? And 95% of them say yes. So you just check that now. Now, note to them that that list is only by email. I do not physically mail out things to those that do not utilize email. I just don't have the resources and time to do so. However, if they don't have email and they would still like information while they're working with you, that's something that they that you can forward on to them too. And then any additional information just goes on those blank lines. If there's any other things that they have, a lot of times I'll ask if there's other children, if they have siblings, if the child has siblings and their ages, and I'll jot that down in that area. Parent guide match to family. If you're the one doing the intake and you're going to be working with family, that would be you, and the date that you're going to start with them, so the date that the intake form is filled out. Contact completed by parent guide. Don't worry about that line. Intake completed by, if you're the one filling out the intake, you would write your name there and put the date that you did the intake. Evaluation sent and received, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the close date or the open, the return phone disconnected or anything like that. Notes, that's where if I'm having a hard time, I got the referral and I've kind of already started the form here for that family, and I'm playing phone tag with them, getting that initial call or initial meeting set up. I'll just jot down there the dates and times that I tried calling and if I left a message or if there was no answer and so forth. The total time when I do the intake form, if it takes me 30 minutes to complete the form with them, 15 minutes, whatever it may be, I'll write that time down in that total time box. Any questions? Okay. So information release forms. If you visit them in person, please have them complete the form. Take it with you when you leave, and then mail the copy to me with the intake form. Again, you can either, I would need the original release, but intake forms you can scan and email to me if you'd like. Otherwise, you can just mail them out. If you mail it to them, ask them the next time you talk to them if they've had any questions or if they've had the opportunity to send it back to them. The form is also available in Spanish, so if you would like that to bring to them, if they would feel more comfortable filling out something that they could read in their native language, it's absolutely understandable. I'll make sure that I forward that on to you. What I typically do when I mail these out to families is I will fill in everything except for the signature area, and I would suggest about having it filled in before you arrive so it will take less time actually during your meeting, or at least the information that you do know. For the signature, they would sign the first of the 3 bottom lines. And if there's somebody else there, dad's there, grandma's there, somebody else in the conversation, they could sign the second line as a witness, and then you can sign the third line as somebody from the organization. If not, you can sign the witness line, and when you mail it in, I will sign the third line. For the dates, put today's date on the line. The release is effective. For the second line, which is the expiration of the release, list the date that's 364 days later. For example, today's date, 3/29/12, will be on the first line. The expiration date will be 3/28/13. And this is what the release form looks like. So the second line, where it says I and then client signature, that's one area that they will sign. The rest, you will fill in all of yourself. Then the 2 lines for the dates in the middle there. If they do not want to offer their consent, you can fill it in with their information. Do not have them sign the top line where it's under client's name. Just have them check the box no, and then sign in the bottom. Okay? All right, in the last section here, resources and information. So where do you find resources? Well, your first stop should always be Hands and Voices. Why? There's the state website, there's the national website. They have the communicator newsletter, which gets sent out quarterly. They've also produced the Book of Choice. They have a training video, which is A is for Access. All the information that Hands and Voices posts has passed the sniff test. It's unbiased. And it's all represented equally and respectfully, from cued speech to ASL to oral and so forth. All of it's out there. All of it has been written by leaders in those fields, and it's respectfully and equally done. So, quality of resources. How do you locate a resource? Well, shopping around the internet can be a little scary. You got to, make sure that where you're receiving information from the internet is a trustworthy source. Obviously, pulling something from the CDC is A-okay, but pulling something off of somebody's blog, maybe not so much. So double checking and making sure that wherever you're getting it from, it's a reputable source. Is it a fact or is it someone's opinion? And then if it's a statistic from a study, who was the one that actually paid or sponsored that study? That's really tricky stuff when parents and families start getting into statistics, because you might not know that, it was the Cochlear Corporation that paid to do the study on the effectiveness of speech after an implant was, set up and started up. So, taking things like that with a grain of salt, is it a study that shows to benefit them? Or is it someplace independent that is, the information was collected responsibly and in a trustworthy manner? And would this be a resource that you would trust? A lot of times I sit back and I think, well, no one guided me and I turned out okay, So looking back into where did you look to, and, would you trust and use this resource for yourself? You want to make sure that it's something that can be trusted, it's unbiased, and it's on target for what that family is looking for. It's not above and beyond where it'll maybe scare off the family or be too much for them to handle. When you don't have the answer, what do you say? I don't know, but I would be happy to look into it for you. That is an A-okay response. When it's not an answer for you to give, but it's better for a professional, refer the family back to the professional. Let the family know that, that's a great question. Have you talked to your audiologist about that? Because a lot of times families are afraid to go back to the professional and ask them because they might feel like they're bothering the professional, or, they don't have enough time for that. Offer additional contacts if they feel like they can't connect with their professional on that, or maybe they have tried to look out to the professional and they felt like they didn't get an appropriate response. So when you offer the additional contacts, how many additional contacts should you offer? I hope your answer is 3. Why would we do this? Because we want to make sure that, again, we're giving an equal share and representation and letting the family truly feel like they have the choice and the power to make that choice, and that they're not stuck with that one provider. So how much information is enough? Again, trying to stick with 3. Reading the family, though, too. If the family has too much information and they're in information overload and they can't really handle it, then suggest, let's just set it aside. Let's take a day off. Let's take a week off. It will be okay. Let's revisit this later. Let them tell you how much is too much, or maybe that they already know that, and they're questioning, do you have anything else I haven't seen? And never assume that the child of a 7-week-old and their needs versus the mom of a 6-year-old. In this digital age, people are surfing the net the second they find out, and the information that they're gathering might be moving them quicker through the process than we ever had the opportunity to for ourselves. However, if you get a freshly diagnosed 6-year-old parent, a parent of a 6-year-old, it's entirely different, because they might be struggling with stages of guilt and grief because, gosh, how long has this been going on, and why didn't I notice it sooner? And they might not be at that stage of looking into it any deeper. But never assume either case that one person is good and one person isn't. So sticking to 3 for everything. Now remembering, when you're sticking to 3 and you're presenting school options, and one school is this beautiful, awesome DVD, and the other school, well, all they got is their website, and the third school, well, you just heard about it from somebody, so you just have that name and number jotted down on a piece of paper. How is that going to look, and how do you think that family is going to, interpret those resources? So nothing you can do about the resources that you have and how you're presenting it to the family, but what you can do is you can encourage them, check them all out, visit their websites, talk to other parents, get the full picture. And realize that not every person has the same learning style. So while you might be a visual learning style and need to see it in front of you and read that brochure, that another family might have to actually go and see, or dad might be the one that needs to go and see the location, where mom just needs to hear about it from another parent. And so making sure that you're trying to represent and give information in the various learning styles, if you can, so that you can reach all types of learning styles. So be prepared, so have those tissues, but not, walking into the family's home and letting down the case of, Cheetos, case of tissues out on the coffee table. I mean, you don't want to scare them off. So, have a little travel pack or something tucked away in your purse or something in case you do need them, but not putting them right out saying, oh, this is going to be a cry fest, be ready. So we don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Be knowledgeable, but also know that, you know what, I don't have the answer for you on that. That's a great question. How about we look into that together? Always listen, and listen. Clarify what the question is. So you want to know what other schools are available in the area? And then move on from there. All right, any questions? All right, we will move on to the answers, or not the answers, you are going to give me the answers. All right, so for question number 1, when working with families, you should A, listen, B, empower, C, ask them questions, D, provide hope, or E, all of the above. Okay, question 2. When using a decision-making strategy, you should A, define the question, identify options, weigh positives and negatives, make a decision, and then later either evaluate the choice or stick with it. B, define the question, ask everyone for their opinion, and choose the most popular choice. Or C, define the question, identify options, make a decision, and stick with it. Question 3. When doing an in-person visits with a family, you can bill for travel time for each in-person visit you have. True or false? Question 4. We prefer all communication with families be done by email. True or false? Question 5. When giving a family information on a topic, you should present them with at least blank resources. A, 2 resources, B, 3 resources, C, 4 resources, or D, 5 resources. Question 6. When should you send in your you should send in your timesheets no later than 45 days from the date of service. True or false? Seven, progress notes are due in every 2 months. True or false? And 8, outreach forms should be filled out when you A, do an in-person presentation, B, mail a letter, C, drop off a popcorn bucket, D, do an Expo booth event, E, answers A and D only, or F, A, B, C, and D. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.